Vortexal of Never-Ending Love. By Sylvester Scoforu. Princess Seraphina had always loved the forest that bordered her father's kingdom, especially in autumn when the leaves turned to copper and gold. On this particular afternoon, she had slipped away from the castle wearing her finest gown, a creation of midnight blue silk embroidered with silver thread that caught the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy above. Her ladies-in-waiting would scold her for wandering alone, but Seraphina craved these stolen moments of freedom. She was following a narrow deer path when she saw it, a fawn, no more than a few weeks old, with spots like scattered stars across its tawny coat. The creature regarded her with liquid dark eyes, showing no fear, and Seraphina's heart melted. When the fawn turned and bounded deeper into the forest, she followed without thinking, her silk skirts whispering against the undergrowth. The fawn led her far from any path she recognized, into a part of the forest so dense that the afternoon light barely penetrated. Just when Seraphina thought she should turn back, the fawn disappeared behind a curtain of wild vines and overgrown bushes. She pushed through the foliage, thorns catching at her elaborate sleeves, and found herself standing before the mouth of a cave she had never seen before, and she thought she knew every corner of these woods. The cave entrance was narrow, almost hidden, as if the forest itself wanted to keep this place secret. But what drew Seraphina's attention wasn't the cave itself, it was the light emanating from deep within. It wasn't the warm orange glow of firelight or the cold white of moonlight. This light danced and shifted, rainbow-colored, like sunlight through a prism, but alive somehow, pulsing with an energy that made the air itself seem to hum. Seraphina hesitated at the threshold. Every sensible part of her mind told her to return to the castle, to forget this strange discovery. But curiosity had always been her weakness, and that otherworldly light called to something deep in her soul. She took one step into the cave, then another, her eyes adjusting to the dimness punctuated by that strange, beautiful glow. The cave tunnel sloped downward, and the light grew stronger with each step. The walls seemed to shimmer with it, casting rainbow shadows that danced across the stone. Seraphina's heartbeat sped up, though whether from fear or excitement, she couldn't say. The air grew warmer, and she could feel something, a vibration, a pulse, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The tunnel opened into a small chamber, and there, suspended in the center of the space, was the source of the light. It was a vortex, a swirling mass of rainbow colors that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her eyes could correctly perceive. It spun slowly, hypnotically, and as Seraphina watched, transfixed, the center of the vortex began to bulge outward, reaching toward her like a living thing. She should have run. She should have fled back up the tunnel and never spoken of this place to anyone. But Seraphina found herself stepping closer, her hand rising of its own accord. The bulge in the vortex pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, or was her heart beating in rhythm with it? She could no longer tell where she ended and this strange magic began. Her fingertips touched the surface of the bulge, and she felt a pulse of energy surge through her entire body. The stone beneath her feet seemed to tilt, or perhaps the world itself tilted. Seraphina lost her footing, her arms windmilling as she tried to catch her balance, but it was too late. She tumbled forward into the light, into the vortex, and the world exploded into a kaleidoscope of color and sensation. She was falling, spinning, twisting through space and time itself, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest, her scream lost in the roar of magic. Seraphina landed hard on cold stone, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. For a long moment, she lay there, gasping, her elaborate gown twisted around her legs, her carefully arranged hair tumbling loose from its pins. The rainbow light was gone. She was in darkness, the kind of complete darkness that only exists deep underground. Panic seized her, and she scrambled to her feet, her hands outstretched, searching for a wall, a direction, anything. Her fingers found rough stone, and she followed it, stumbling and tripping over her skirts, until she saw it, a faint gray light ahead. The cave entrance. She emerged into daylight that seemed too bright after the darkness, blinking and shielding her eyes. For a moment, relief flooded through her. She was out of that terrible cave. She was safe. But as her eyes adjusted and she looked around, confusion replaced relief. This was the forest. It was definitely the forest. But something was different. The trees were in slightly different positions. The undergrowth was thicker in some places, thinner in others. The deer path she had followed was gone, or rather, there was a path, but it led in a different direction. It was like looking at a painting that was almost, but not quite, the same as one she knew by heart. Seraphina gathered her skirts and began walking, trying to orient herself, trying to find something familiar. Her fine slippers, made for palace floors, were already ruined, and her gown was torn in several places from the thorns and her fall. She must look like a madwoman, she thought, wandering through the forest in a ball gown in the middle of the day. She walked for what felt like hours, though the sun barely seemed to move in the sky. Nothing looked quite right. The forest was the same, but different. Similar, but wrong. Where was the castle? Where was the road? Where was anything she recognized? Finally, she heard it, the sound of running water. A stream. If she could follow the stream, it would lead her somewhere, to a village or a road or something. She pushed through a stand of willows and found herself on the bank of a clear, fast-moving stream. And there, sitting on a flat rock with a fishing pole in his hands, was a man. Finn had been fishing since dawn, and he had exactly 3 small trout to show for it. Not his best day, but not his worst either. The stream was peaceful, the autumn air was crisp and clean, and he had nowhere else he needed to be. This was his favorite spot, a bend in the stream where the water ran deep and the fish liked to gather in the shade of the overhanging willows. He was considering whether to try a different fly when he heard something crashing through the underbrush behind him. Something large. Finn's hand tightened on his fishing pole as he listened. The crashing continued, accompanied by what sounded like muttered cursing, definitely not a bear, then, unless bears had learned to swear. But it could be a wild hog, and those were just as dangerous. He set down his pole carefully and picked up a large tree limb he'd noticed earlier, a solid piece of oak that would make a decent club if he needed it. The willows parted, and Finn raised his makeshift weapon, ready to defend himself. Then he froze, his mouth falling open. A woman stumbled out of the willows and onto the stream bank. But not just any woman. She was wearing the most elaborate gown Finn had ever seen, midnight blue silk that shimmered in the sunlight, embroidered with silver thread in patterns so intricate they must have taken months to create. Her dark hair tumbled around her shoulders in waves, and even disheveled and covered in leaves and dirt, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on. She was also completely out of place. Women in gowns like that didn't wander through the forest alone. Women in gowns like that didn't wander through forests at all. They stayed in castles and manor houses, attended by servants, protected by guards. "Who are you?" Finn demanded, still holding the tree limb, though he felt ridiculous threatening a woman with it. "What are you doing out here?" The woman, the lady, clearly, looked at him with wide eyes the color of storm clouds. "I might ask you the same question," she said, and her voice was cultured, educated, with the accent of nobility. "This is my father's forest." you're the one who shouldn't be here. Finn lowered the tree limbs slightly, confusion replacing his initial alarm. Your father's forest? Lady, I've been fishing this stream since I was a boy. My father fished it, and his father before him. This is common land, has been for generations. Common land? The woman looked around as if seeing the forest for the first time. That's impossible. These are the royal forests of Aldermere. Commoners aren't permitted to hunt or fish here without permission from the crown. Aldermere? Finn set down the tree limb entirely now. Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no kingdom called Aldermere. This is the Thornwood, and it's been common land since before my grandfather's time. They stared at each other across the stream bank, each clear. Are you feeling well? Seraphina asked, taking a cautious step forward. Perhaps the man had hit his head. That would explain why he was speaking such obvious nonsense. Should I fetch a physician? Is there a village nearby? The fisherman, for that's clearly what he was, with his simple homespun clothes and his fishing pole, laughed, though it wasn't a particularly amused sound. Should you fetch a physician? Lady, you're the one wandering through the forest in a gown that probably costs more than my house, talking about kingdoms that don't exist. If anyone needs a physician, it's you. Seraphina drew herself up to her full height, which admittedly wasn't very impressive, but she had been trained since birth in the art of royal dignity. I am Princess Seraphina of Aldermere, daughter of King Edmund and Queen Rosalind. I don't appreciate being spoken to in that tone, and I certainly don't appreciate being called mad by a fisherman. A fisherman? The man's eyebrows rose. Well, at least you got that part right. Name's Finn, since we're being formal. And I'm sorry, Your Highness, he added, with a mocking little bow that made Seraphina's cheeks flush with anger, but I've lived in these parts all my life, and there's no kingdom of Aldermere. There's no King Edmund. And there's definitely no castle anywhere near here. No castle? Seraphina looked around wildly. That's absurd. The castle is just beyond the forest, no more than an hour's walk from here. I left it this afternoon. Lady, princess, whatever you want to be called, Finn said, and now his voice was gentler, concerned. There's nothing beyond this forest but farmland and villages. The nearest city is Millhaven, and that's a day's ride from here. Are you lost? Did you hit your head? Were you thrown from a horse? I am not lost, I did not hit my head, and I was not thrown from a horse. Seraphina snapped. I walked into a cave, and there was a light, and I fell through it, and now I'm here, and nothing makes sense. Finn's expression shifted from concern to alarm. You fell through a light? In a cave? Lady, that sounds like... He stopped himself, shaking his head. No. That's just old stories. Fairy tales. What old stories? Seraphina demanded. What fairy tales? Finn ran a hand through his dark hair, clearly uncomfortable. My grandmother used to tell stories about the old caves in the deep forest. She said they were doorways, portals to other places. Other times. But they were just stories, the kind you tell children to keep them from wandering too far from home. Seraphina felt something cold settle in her stomach. Other times, she repeated slowly. You mean, time travel? That's impossible. More impossible than a kingdom that doesn't exist? Finn shot back. More impossible than a princess appearing out of nowhere in the middle of the forest? They stared at each other again, and Seraphina could see the exact moment when the same realization that was dawning on her began to dawn on him as well. "What year is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Finn told her. Seraphina's legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the stream bank. The year he had named was 300 years after her own time. 300 years. Everyone she knew, everyone she loved, her father, her mother, her friends, her ladies-in-waiting, they were all long dead. Dust and bones and fading memories. "Oh," she said faintly. "Oh no." Finn crouched down beside her, his earlier suspicion replaced by genuine concern. Hey, it's all right. Just breathe. You're not going to faint on me, are you?" "I might," Seraphina admitted. The world seemed to be tilting again, just like it had in the cave. "I've traveled 300 years into the future. I think I'm entitled to faint if I want to." "Fair point," Finn conceded. He sat down beside her on the bank, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to catch her if she did faint. "So, time travel. That's really something." Despite everything, Seraphina felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat. "That's really something? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say?" Finn asked, and now there was a hint of amusement in his voice. "I've never met a time traveler before. I'm not sure what the proper etiquette is. Should I bow? Offer you tea? Run away screaming?" "Running away screaming seems appropriate," Seraphina said, but she found herself smiling despite the terror and confusion swirling through her mind. There was something about this man, this Finn, that made her feel slightly less like the world was ending. Maybe it was the way he was taking this impossible situation in stride, or maybe it was the kindness in his eyes, or maybe it was just that he was the only familiar thing in this strange new world, even though she'd only just met him. "I don't run away from much," Finn said. "Especially not from beautiful women who fall out of the sky. Or out of time. Whatever." Seraphina felt her cheeks warm. "You think I'm beautiful?" "I think you're terrifying," Finn said honestly. "You're a princess from 300 years ago, you're wearing a gown that probably cost more than everything I own, and you appeared out of nowhere talking about magic caves and vortexes. But yes, you're also beautiful. Those things aren't mutually exclusive." "You're very strange," Seraphina said. "Says the time traveler," Finn replied. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the stream burble past, and Seraphina tried to process everything that had happened. She had fallen through time. Her entire world was gone. She was alone in a future she didn't understand, with no way to get home. Except, there was a way to get home, wasn't there? The cave. The vortex. If it had brought her here, it could take her back. "I need to find the cave," she said, standing up abruptly. "The one I came through. If I can get back to it, maybe I can go home." Finn stood as well, brushing dirt from his trousers. "Do you remember where it was?" Seraphina looked around, trying to orient herself. "I'm not sure. Everything looks different. Similar, but different." "Well, we can look for it," Finn offered. "I know these woods pretty well. If there's a cave around here, I can probably find it. But it's getting late. The sun will be down in a few hours, and you don't want to be wandering around the forest in the dark. Especially not in that dress." Seraphina looked down at her ruined gown. He had a point. "What do you suggest?" Come back to my cottage, Finn said. It's not far from here. You can rest, have something to eat, and we'll look for the cave in the morning when we have proper light. Seraphina hesitated. Every rule of propriety she had ever been taught screamed at her that going to a strange man's cottage was absolutely out of the question. But then again, every rule of propriety she had ever been taught came from a world that no longer existed. And what choice did she have? She couldn't wander the forest all night. All right, she said finally. But if you try anything improper, You'll what? Finn asked, amused. Turn me into a frog? You're a time traveler, not a witch. I'll hit you with that tree limb you were threatening me with earlier, Seraphina said firmly. Finn laughed, a genuine, warm sound that made something in Seraphina's chest feel lighter. Fair enough. Come on, Your Highness. Let's get you somewhere safe. They spent the evening in Finn's cottage, which was small but clean and surprisingly cozy. He made her a simple meal of bread and cheese and the trout he'd caught that morning, and Seraphina discovered that she was ravenously hungry. They talked as they ate, and Seraphina found herself telling him about her life in the castle, about her parents, about the world she had left behind. Finn listened with genuine interest, asking questions, and in turn, he told her about his life, about fishing and farming and the simple rhythms of his days. It should have been awkward, a princess and a fisherman sitting together in a tiny cottage, but somehow it wasn't. Finn treated her like a person, not like a title, and Seraphina found that refreshing. In her own time, people were always so careful around her, so formal. Finn was neither careful nor formal. He teased her gently about her elaborate gown, and she teased him back about his fishing skills, and by the time the sun set, Seraphina realized she was actually enjoying herself. But as the darkness deepened outside the cottage windows, reality set in. She needed to find the cave. She needed to go home. Her parents would be frantic with worry. The entire kingdom would be searching for her. We'll start looking at first light, Finn promised, seeing the worry on her face. I'll help you find it. I promise. Seraphina nodded, grateful. Finn gave her his bed, a simple straw mattress, but clean and comfortable, and insisted on sleeping on the floor by the fire. Seraphina protested, but he was adamant, and eventually, she gave in. She lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of this future world, thinking about everything that had happened. And thinking, despite herself, about the man sleeping on the floor below. There was something about Finn that drew her, something beyond his kindness and his humor. She felt safe with him, which was strange, considering she'd only just met him. But there was a steadiness to him, a quiet strength, that made her feel like everything might actually be all right. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. They searched for the cave all the next morning. Finn led her through the forest, showing her every cave and rocky outcropping he knew, but none of them were right. None of them had the narrow entrance hidden by vines, none of them had the rainbow light. Maybe it's not here anymore, Seraphina said finally, her voice small and frightened. Maybe it only existed in my time. Or maybe we just haven't found it yet, Finn said, but she could hear the doubt in his voice. They searched for hours more, until the sun was high overhead and Seraphina's ruined slippers were falling apart on her feet. Finally, Finn called a halt. We need to rest, he said. And eat. We'll keep looking, I promise. We'll search every inch of this forest if we have to. But Seraphina could see it in his eyes, he was starting to think they might not find it. That she might be trapped here, in this future, forever. The thought terrified her. But what terrified her more was the small, traitorous part of her heart that whispered, would that really be so bad? They returned to the stream where they had first met, and Finn caught more fish while Seraphina sat on the bank, lost in thought. She watched him work, the easy competence of his movements, the patience in his posture. He was so different from the men she knew in her own time, the courtiers and nobles who postured and preened and played their political games. Finn was real in a way they had never been. "I found it," she said suddenly. Finn looked up from his fishing. "What?" "The cave. I found it. While you were fishing just now, I walked upstream a bit, and I found it." It was a lie, but she needed to say it, needed to see his reaction. Finn's face went through a complicated series of emotions: relief, happiness, and then something else. Something that looked almost like disappointment. Or sadness. That's wonderful," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You can go home." "Yes," Seraphina said softly. "I can go home." They looked at each other across the stream, and Seraphina felt something shift between them, something unspoken but powerful. In just one day, this man had become important to her in a way she couldn't quite explain. And she could see in his eyes that he felt it too. But she had to go home. Her parents needed her. Her kingdom needed her. She couldn't just abandon her entire life, her entire world, for a man she'd only just met. Could she? "I should go," she said, standing up. "Before it gets dark. Before I lose my nerve." Finn set down his fishing pole and crossed the stream, stepping from stone to stone until he stood before her. "Will you?" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Will you be all right? Going back through that thing?" "I don't know," Seraphina admitted. "But I have to try." Finn nodded. Then, impulsively, he reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and strong, and Seraphina felt a jolt of electricity at the contact. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For believing me. For helping me. For being kind." "It was my pleasure, Your Highness," Finn said, and this time there was no mockery in the title. I hope you have a good life. In your time. I hope you're happy." "I hope the same for you," Seraphina whispered. She should let go of his hand. She should turn and walk away. But she couldn't seem to make herself move. "Seraphina," Finn said, and the sound of her name on his lips made her heart ache. If you ever wanted to come back, I'll be here. At this spot. Every day. Just in case." "Finn, you can't, I know," he said. "I know it's foolish. I know you probably won't come back. But I'll be here anyway. Just in case." Seraphina felt tears prick her eyes. "You're a good man, Finn. And you're an extraordinary woman, Seraphina." She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick and chaste, and then she turned and ran before she could change her mind. She ran through the forest, following the path upstream, and yes, there it was, the cave, exactly where she remembered it, hidden behind vines and bushes. She had lied about finding it earlier, but the lie had become the truth. She plunged into the darkness without looking back, following the rainbow light that pulsed in the depths. The vortex was still there, still spinning, still alive with that otherworldly energy. Seraphina didn't hesitate this time. She stepped forward and let it take her. The world exploded into color and sensation once more, and then she was falling, tumbling, twisting through time itself. When she landed on the cold stone floor of the cave, she was back in her own time. She knew it instinctively, the way you know the feel of your own home. She stumbled out of the cave and into the forest, and yes, everything was right again. The trees were in the right places. The deer path was there. And in the distance, through the trees, she could see the towers of her father's castle. She was home. So why did it feel like she had left something vital behind? The next few weeks were torture. Seraphina returned to the castle and was greeted with relief, joy, and 1,000 questions about where she had been. She told them she had gotten lost in the forest, that she had spent the night in a woodcutter's cottage, that she was okay, perfectly fine. No one questioned her story too closely. They were just happy she was safe. But Seraphina wasn't fine. She couldn't stop thinking about Finn. She would lie awake at night, remembering the way he had looked at her, the way his hand had felt in hers, the way he had promised to wait for her. She told herself she was being ridiculous. She had known him for barely a day. It was impossible to fall in love with someone in a day. Except she was starting to suspect that it wasn't impossible at all. She went through the motions of her daily life, attending court, sitting through tedious meetings with her father's advisors, entertaining visiting nobles. But her heart wasn't in it. Her heart was 300 years in the future, sitting on a stream bank with a fisherman who had shown her more genuine kindness in one day than most people had shown her in her entire life. Her mother noticed, of course. Queen Rosalind was far too perceptive to miss the change in her daughter. "What's troubling you, my dear?" she asked one evening as they sat together in the Queen's solar, working on embroidery. "Nothing, Mother," Seraphina lied. "You've been distracted ever since you returned from the forest," the Queen observed. "Did something happen out there? Something you're not telling us?" Seraphina's needle stilled. She wanted to tell her mother everything, about the cave, the vortex, the impossible journey through time. About Finn. But how could she? Her mother would think she was mad. Everyone would think she was mad. "I'm fine," she said instead. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. And as the days turned into weeks, she became more and more certain of one thing: she had made a terrible mistake. She had chosen duty over her heart, and now she was paying the price. She had to go back. The realization came to her one night as she lay in her elaborate bed in her elaborate room in the elaborate castle, surrounded by all the trappings of her royal life. None of it mattered. None of it made her happy. She had spent her whole life doing what was expected of her, being the perfect princess, and where had it gotten her? She was miserable. But when she had been with Finn, even for just that one day, she had felt more alive than she had ever felt in her entire life. She had to go back. The decision made, Seraphina felt a weight lift from her chest. She would go back. She would find Finn. And if he were still waiting for her, if he had meant what he said about being there every day, then she would stay. She would give up her title, her kingdom, her entire life, and she would stay with him in that future world. And if he wasn't there? If he had moved on, forgotten about her? Well, she would deal with that when it happened. The next morning, Seraphina rose before dawn. She dressed in a simple gown, nothing like the elaborate creation she had worn before. She left a note for her parents, telling them she loved them but that she had to follow her heart. She knew they wouldn't understand, but she hoped they might forgive her someday. Then she slipped out of the castle and into the forest, following the path she had taken weeks before. Her heart pounded with anticipation and fear as she pushed through the vines and entered the cave. The rainbow light was still there, pulsing in the darkness, calling to her. This time, when she stepped into the vortex, she did so with joy. Seraphina emerged from the cave into bright morning sunlight. She took a moment to orient herself, then set off through the forest, following the path to the stream. Her heart was racing, her palms were sweating, and she felt like she might burst with anticipation. What if he wasn't there? What if he had given up on her? But when she pushed through the willows and onto the stream bank, there he was. Finn, sitting on the same flat rock, holding the same fishing pole, looked exactly as he had the last time she had seen him. He looked up at the sound of her approach, and his face went through a series of expressions so quickly she could barely track them: surprise, disbelief, hope, and finally, pure joy. "Seraphina," he breathed, dropping his fishing pole and standing up so quickly he nearly fell into the stream. "You're here," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You're actually here. You waited." "I told you I would," Finn said, and then he was crossing the stream, and she was running toward him, and they met in the middle, his arms wrapping around her, lifting her off her feet. "I can't believe you came back," he said into her hair. "I hoped, but I didn't dare believe. I had to," Seraphina said, pulling back to look at him. "I tried to stay in my own time, I really did. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. I couldn't stop feeling like I had left part of myself behind." "I felt the same way," Finn admitted. "Like I had met you and lost you in the same day, and nothing would ever be right again." "I'm here now," Seraphina said. "And I'm not going back. I'm staying. If you'll have me. If I'll have you." Finn laughed, a sound of pure happiness. "Seraphina, I've been coming to this spot every single day for weeks, hoping against hope that you would come back. Of course, I'll have you. I'll have you for as long as you'll stay." "Forever, then," Seraphina said. "I'll stay forever." Finn cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. "Are you sure? You're giving up everything, your title, your family, your entire world." "I'm not giving up anything," Seraphina said firmly. "I'm choosing something. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing a life where I can be myself and be happy. That's not giving up. That's gaining everything." "You're extraordinary," Finn said softly, and then he kissed her. It was nothing like the chaste kiss she had given him before. This was real and deep and full of all the longing and hope and love that had been building between them. Seraphina melted into it, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe again. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless and smiling. "So what now?" Finn asked. "Do you want to go back to my cottage? We should probably figure out the practicalities of you living at this time. You'll need clothes, and we should probably come up with a story about where you came from, and, later," Seraphina said, laughing. "We can figure all that out later. Right now, I just want to be with you." They spent the day together, walking through the forest, talking and laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. Finn showed her his favorite spots: a meadow full of wildflowers, a grove of ancient oaks, a waterfall that sparkled in the sunlight. Seraphina felt like she was seeing the world with new eyes, everything bright and beautiful and full of possibility. As the afternoon wore on, Finn suggested they go back to his cottage. "I don't have much," he warned. "But what I have is yours." I don't need much, Seraphina assured him. Just you. They were walking back through the forest, hand in hand, when Finn suddenly stopped. Wait here, he said. There's something I want to show you. A surprise. What kind of surprise? Seraphina asked, intrigued. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, Finn said with a grin. Stay here. I'll be right back. He disappeared into the trees, and Seraphina waited, smiling to herself. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt this happy, this light. It was like a weight she hadn't even known she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. She heard hoofbeats before she saw the horse. Finn emerged from the trees leading a beautiful chestnut mare with a white blaze on her forehead. I borrowed her from my neighbor, Finn explained. I thought you might like to ride. I know you're used to horses, being a princess and all, and I thought, she's beautiful, Seraphina breathed, approaching the mare slowly. The horse nickered softly and nuzzled her hand. What's her name? Rosie, Finn said. She's gentle as a lamb. I thought we could ride back to the cottage together. It's a bit of a walk, and you've been on your feet all day. That's very thoughtful, Seraphina said, touched by his consideration. She had ridden horses all her life, of course, but the horses in the royal stables were spirited and high-strung, bred for speed and beauty. This mare seemed calm and sweet-tempered. Finn helped her mount, and Seraphina settled into the saddle, adjusting her skirts. It felt good to be on horseback again, familiar and comfortable. I'll walk alongside you, Finn said, taking the reins. Don't be silly, Seraphina said. Ride with me. There's plenty of room. Finn hesitated, then grinned and swung up behind her. His arms came around her waist to hold the reins, and Seraphina leaned back against his chest, feeling safe and content. They started off at a gentle walk, following a narrow path through the trees. Seraphina was thinking how perfect the day had been, how perfect everything was, when a rabbit darted out of the underbrush directly in front of the horse. Rosie, gentle as she was, shied violently. Seraphina felt herself slipping, felt Finn's arms tighten around her, trying to hold her, but it was too late. She tumbled sideways out of the saddle, and the world tilted and spun. She hit the ground hard, her left leg twisting beneath her at an unnatural angle. There was a sickening crack, and then pain, white-hot and all-consuming, exploded through her body. She heard Finn shouting her name, felt his hands on her, but the pain was too much. The world went gray at the edges, and then black. When Seraphina woke, she was lying on something soft. Finn's bed, she realized. She was in his cottage. The light coming through the window was dim in the evening. How long had she been unconscious? Finn, she called, and her voice came out weak and thready. He was at her side in an instant, his face pale and drawn with worry. Thank God, he breathed. You're awake. How do you feel? My leg, Seraphina said, and even speaking sent waves of pain through her. What happened? It's broken, Finn said grimly. Badly broken. I've splinted it as best I could, but Seraphina, you need a proper doctor. I sent for the physician from the village, but he won't be here until morning. Seraphina tried to sit up, only to immediately regret it. The pain was excruciating, and she fell back against the pillows with a gasp. Don't move, Finn said urgently. Please, just stay still. The physician will be here soon, and he'll know what to do. The cave, Seraphina said suddenly, panic cutting through the pain. Finn, I can't go back through the vortex like this. I can't walk. I can't even stand. I know, Finn said, and she could hear the fear in his voice. I know. But we'll figure it out. Once your leg heals. How long will that take? Seraphina demanded. Weeks? Months? I don't know, Finn admitted. But Seraphina, you're not going anywhere right now. You're hurt, and you need to heal. We'll worry about the vortex later. Seraphina wanted to argue, but another wave of pain washed over her, and she couldn't find the words. Finn held her hand, his thumb stroking gently over her knuckles, and gradually the pain receded to a dull, throbbing ache. I'm sorry, Finn said quietly. This is my fault. I shouldn't have suggested writing. I shouldn't have. It's not your fault, Seraphina interrupted. It was an accident. These things happen. But even as she said it, she couldn't help but think, what if this wasn't an accident? What if this was fate, or destiny, or whatever force had brought her through time in the first place? What if she was meant to stay here, in this time, with this man? The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it brought a strange sense of peace. Finn, she said softly. I'm not going back. Even after my leg heals. I'm staying here. With you. Finn's eyes widened. Seraphina, you don't have to decide that now. You're in pain, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, Seraphina said. I made my choice when I came back through the vortex. I chose you. I chose this life. A broken leg doesn't change that. But your family, Finn protested. Your kingdom. Don't you want to at least say goodbye? Seraphina thought about her parents, about the note she had left them. It wasn't much of a goodbye, but it would have to be enough. I said goodbye when I left, she said. And Finn, even if I wanted to go back, I couldn't. Not now. By the time my leg heals, weeks will have passed here. But in my time? Who knows how time works between the two worlds? It might be days, or months, or years. I could go back and find that decades have passed. My parents could be dead. Everything I knew could be gone. She hadn't thought of that before, but now that she said it, she realized it was true. Time was clearly not linear between the two worlds. She had spent weeks in her own time thinking about Finn, but for him, those same weeks had passed here. What if the vortex didn't just move you through time, but moved you through it unpredictably? What if going back now meant arriving years or even decades after she had left? I can't risk it, she said. And honestly, I don't want to. I want to stay here. With you. If you'll have me. Finn brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I'll have you, he said. For as long as you'll stay. Forever, if you'll let me. Forever sounds perfect, Seraphina whispered. The physician arrived the next morning, a kindly older man who examined Seraphina's leg with gentle, competent hands. He confirmed what Finn had already told her, the leg was badly broken, and it would take weeks, possibly months, to heal properly. You'll need to stay off it completely for at least 6 weeks, the physician said. After that, we'll see how it's healing. But I won't lie to you, young lady, this is a serious injury. You may walk with a limp for the rest of your life. Seraphina nodded, accepting the news with more calm than she felt. A limp seemed a small price to pay for the life she had chosen. Finn took care of her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. He brought her meals, read to her from his small collection of books, told her stories about his life and his family. He never complained about the extra work, never made her feel like a burden. And slowly, as the days passed, Seraphina's leg began to heal. But more than her leg was healing. Her heart, which had felt so empty and lost in her own time, was healing too. She was falling in love with Finn, truly and deeply in love, and she could see in his eyes that he felt the same way. Part 5. Waiting and resolution. 2 weeks passed, and Seraphina's leg was healing well, according to the physician. She could sit up now without too much pain, and she could even stand for short periods, leaning heavily on a crutch that Finn had made for her. But she still couldn't walk any real distance, and the idea of making the journey through the forest to the cave was impossible. Not that she wanted to make that journey. She had meant what she said, she was staying. This was her home now. Finn was her home. But Finn was growing restless. She could see it in the way he paced the small cottage, in the way he stared out the window at the forest beyond. He was worried about something, but he wouldn't tell her what. "Finn, what's wrong?" she asked one evening as they sat together by the fire. "You've been distracted all day." Finn sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I haven't been to the stream in 2 weeks, he said. "Not since your accident. I've been here, taking care of you, and I don't regret that for a second. But Seraphina, what if you changed your mind? What if you decided you wanted to go back to your own time after all? I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't know." Seraphina stared at him, confused. "Finn, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "I know," Finn said. "But what if there's another you? What if time works differently than we think, and there's a version of you that's still in your own time, still trying to decide whether to come back? What if she comes through the vortex and I'm not there to meet her?" Seraphina's head spun trying to follow his logic. "Finn, that doesn't make any sense. There's only one me, and I'm here." "Are you sure?" Finn asked. "We don't understand how the vortex works. We don't understand time travel." "What if, Finn?" Seraphina interrupted gently. "You're overthinking this. There's only one me, and I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. You don't need to go to the stream every day anymore. I'm not going to disappear." But she could see that her words didn't entirely reassure him. He was still worried, still anxious. And she realized, with a pang of guilt, that she had put him through hell these past 2 weeks. He had been taking care of her, worrying about her, and all the while, he had been tormented by the thought that she might somehow slip away from him. "Go," she said suddenly. "Go to the stream. Just for today. Just to put your mind at ease." "I can't leave you," Finn protested. "What if you need something?" "I'll be fine for a few hours," Seraphina assured him. "The physician said I'm healing well. I can manage on my own for a little while. Go. Fish. Clear your head. And when you come back, we'll talk about the future. Our future. Together." Finn hesitated, clearly torn, but finally he nodded. "All right. But I'll be back before dark. I promise." He kissed her forehead, grabbed his fishing pole, and headed out the door. Seraphina watched him go, feeling a mixture of love and exasperation. He was so worried about losing her, so afraid that this happiness they had found was too good to be true. She would have to find a way to convince him that she was here to stay. That she wasn't going anywhere. That he was stuck with her, broken leg and all. Finn walked through the forest toward the stream, his mind churning. He knew Seraphina was right, he was overthinking things. But he couldn't help it. The past 2 weeks had been the happiest of his life, but they had also been terrifying. Every time he looked at Seraphina, he was afraid she would vanish, that he would wake up and discover this had all been a dream. He had fallen in love with her. Completely, irrevocably in love. And the thought of losing her was unbearable. He reached the stream and settled onto his usual rock, casting his line into the water. The familiar rhythm of fishing calmed him, and he felt some of his anxiety ease. Seraphina was right. She was here. She was real. She had chosen him, chosen this life, and he needed to trust that. He fished for hours, losing himself in the peace of the forest, the sound of the stream, and the warmth of the afternoon sun. He caught several fish, enough for dinner and then some, and he was thinking about heading back to the cottage when he heard something. Footsteps. Someone was coming through the forest. Finn turned, expecting to see a neighbor or perhaps a traveler, and froze. A woman was emerging from the trees. She was wearing a simple dress, her dark hair pulled back in a braid, and she was limping slightly, favoring her left leg. It was Seraphina. But that was impossible. Seraphina was back at the cottage. He had left her there just a few hours ago. The woman saw him and stopped, her eyes widening. "Finn," she said, and it was Seraphina's voice, Seraphina's face, Seraphina's everything. "Seraphina?" Finn said, his mind reeling. How are you here? You're at the cottage. You can't walk this far." "Your leg, my leg is healed," the woman said, taking a step closer. "It's been 6 weeks, Finn. 6 weeks since the accident. The physician said I could start walking again, so I came to find you. I knew you'd be here." 6 weeks. But it had only been 2 weeks since the accident. Finn felt like the ground was tilting beneath his feet. "What's wrong?" Seraphina asked, concern in her voice. "Finn, you look like you've seen a ghost." "I don't understand," Finn said slowly. "Seraphina, it's only been 2 weeks. Your leg can't be healed. It's impossible." Now it was Seraphina's turn to look confused. 2 weeks? "Finn, what are you talking about?" "It's been 6 weeks. I've been at the cottage, healing, and you've been coming here every day to fish. Don't you remember?" Finn's head was spinning. This didn't make sense. Unless time was moving differently for them, unless the vortex had done something, created some kind of temporal split. He had been living for 2 weeks, while Seraphina had been living for 6. Or maybe there were 2 Seraphinas. One at the cottage, 2 weeks post-accident. And one here, 6 weeks post-accident. "I need to go," Finn said abruptly, grabbing his fishing pole. "I need to get back to the cottage." "I'll come with you," Seraphina said, but Finn was already running. He ran through the forest, his heart pounding, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. This was impossible. But then again, time travel was impossible, and that had happened. Magic vortexes were impossible, and those existed. Maybe this was just another impossible thing in a world that had suddenly become full of them. He burst through the door of his cottage, and there she was. Seraphina, sitting by the fire, her broken leg propped up on a stool, exactly where he had left her. She looked up in surprise. "Finn? You're back early. Is everything all right?" Finn opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, the door opened behind him. The other Seraphina, the one from the stream, stepped into the cottage. The two Seraphinas stared at each other in shock. What? The Seraphina by the fire began. How? The Seraphina from the stream said. And then, as Finn watched in amazement, the Seraphina from the stream began to shimmer and fade, like mist in the morning sun. Within seconds, she was gone, as if she had never been there at all. The Seraphina by the fire looked at Finn, her eyes wide. What just happened? Finn sank into a chair, his legs suddenly weak. I think that was you. From the future. From 4 weeks in the future, when your leg is healed. But how is that possible? The vortex, Finn said. It doesn't just move you through time. It creates echoes, maybe. Or possibilities. I don't know. But I think what we just saw was a glimpse of the future. Of our future. Seraphina was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then she smiled, a slow, radiant smile that made Finn's heart skip a beat. Did you see? She said. In that future, I came to find you. I was healed, and I came to the stream to find you. That means I stayed, Finn. That means we have a future together. Finn felt something tight in his chest loosen. She was right. The vision, or echo, or whatever it had been, had shown him a future where Seraphina was healed and happy and still with him. Still choosing him. You're right, he said, moving to kneel beside her chair. We have a future. Together. Together, Seraphina agreed, taking his hand. 4 weeks later, Seraphina's leg was fully healed. She walked with only the slightest limp, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. The physician pronounced her recovered and told her she was free to resume normal activities. Though I'd avoid falling off any more horses, he added with a wry smile. Seraphina laughed. I'll do my best. She and Finn had settled into a comfortable life together. Finn had introduced her to his neighbors as a distant cousin who had come to stay with him, and if anyone thought it was strange that this cousin spoke with an educated accent and had the bearing of nobility, they were too polite to say so. Seraphina had learned to cook and clean and do all the practical things that princesses were never taught. She had also learned to fish, and she and Finn spent many peaceful afternoons at the stream together. But there was one thing they hadn't done yet. One conversation they hadn't had. Finn, Seraphina said one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. I want to go back to the cave. To the vortex. Finn's hand tightened on hers. Why? Not to go through it, Seraphina said quickly. I just want to see it. To say goodbye, I suppose. To that part of my life. Does that make sense? Finn nodded slowly. It does. And I'll come with you. They made the journey the next day, walking hand in hand through the forest. Seraphina's leg ached a bit by the time they reached the cave, but it was a manageable ache, nothing like the agony of the break. They pushed through the vines and entered the cave, following the rainbow light down into the depths. The vortex was still there, still spinning, still pulsing with that otherworldly energy. Seraphina stood before it, remembering the first time she had seen it, remembering the fear and wonder she had felt. It seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had only been a few months. I could go back, she said softly. Right now. I could step through and return to my own time. Do you want to? Finn asked, and she could hear the fear in his voice. carefully controlled but still there. No, Seraphina said firmly. I don't. I just wanted to see it one more time. To remind myself of the choice I made. And to be grateful for it. She turned away from the vortex and looked at Finn, at this man who had become her entire world. I love you, she said. I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. I love you, Finn. More than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. Finn's face broke into a smile so bright it rivaled the rainbow light of the vortex. I love you too, he said. I've loved you since the moment you stumbled out of the forest in that ridiculous gown, looking like you'd just fallen out of the sky. I had just fallen out of the sky, Seraphina pointed out. Or out of time, anyway. True, Finn conceded. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. Seraphina, I know we haven't known each other very long. And I know this is probably too soon. But I don't care. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Seraphina felt tears spring to her eyes. Yes, she said. Yes, of course I'll marry you. They kissed there in the cave, with the vortex spinning behind them, a reminder of the impossible journey that had brought them together. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. We should go, Finn said. Before that thing decides to suck us both into another time. Seraphina laughed and took his hand. They walked back up the tunnel together, leaving the vortex and the cave behind. As they emerged into the sunlight, Seraphina took one last look back at the cave entrance, hidden behind its curtain of vines. Goodbye, she whispered. And thank you. Then she turned away and walked into her future, hand in hand with the man she loved.